All right, it is Tuesday night. Time for some Turnbuckle Talk, testing free agency. This is your host, Chris Best, and I've got the one and only Chris Parrish with me. Mr. Parrish, how are you doing today?
Oh, not too bad. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm dealing with a little bit of frustration because I forgot to cancel my Sportsnet Plus app yesterday, my subscription to it. So my bank ended up taking $40 to pay for it out of my account. So I'm stuck with Sportsnet Plus for another month. At least I get TNA out of that deal.
Well, there you go. And yeah, since we're going to be talking for agency, TNA, it's definitely going to be a hot topic later on today.
It's actually going to be our first topic as well.
There you go.
So
Segue.
segue. Yeah, so of course, our first topic of the day is going to be Bobby Stats saying hello, guys. That's our first topic. No, how's it going, Bobby? Glad to have you here. But our first topic of the day is a man that was once in the free agency but no longer isn't. AJ Francis has signed a new deal with TNA. And I'm actually happy about this because of the stuff that he has been doing prior to this new contract. What do you see them doing with him in the near future now? Does he go back and feud with Nick Nemeth, or what do we do with him?
No, I don't think he does anything with Nick Nemeth. Obviously, right now, the plan TNA with Nick Nemeth is Joe Hendry coming up for the TNA World Championship. And I think a lot of people expect Joe Hendry to win the championship there. I think right now, well, first off, the topic at hand, AJ Francis re-signing. Amazing news because I think he's finding his groove with TNA. And I think this is a place where obviously when he went with WWE the first time, he was in NXT, he was with Hit Row, and that got some steam. And then they went up to the main roster minus BFAB, which is hilariously ironic given who is now on SmackDown and who's not. Everyone else from Hit Row is not on SmackDown. BFAB is, so a little irony there.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think AJ France is there. Obviously, he's in a little bit of a pairing there over in TNA, so he very well could win the tag team championships, as Bobby Stats is coming in and saying, or he could go after a singles championship. I just don't know necessarily if it is, but if Joe Hendry does win that championship, he does have some unfinished business with Joe Hendry, so he could be a very much a first competitor if Joe Hendry was to win the title. But I think this is great news for AJ Francis. Again, he's finding his rhythm. He's finding who he is outside of the WWE bubble because it didn't really work out for him there. So if it does fit with him there, he got a little steam with MLW, now with TNA, and I think this is just a good thing.
Yeah, I remember going into that Nick Nemeth match at Final Resolution and me calling him like the nickname that we've called him, Flop Dollar, all that kind of thing.
Well, you've called him that.
I have, and I will admit to that. And that match actually turned me around because I hadn't seen much of AJ Francis wrestling in TNA because, again, my limited access to TNA that was there. So I'm now excited and intrigued to see more of him. And you hit the nail on the head there when you said if Joe Hendry wins the title, there's unfinished business there. So again, AJ Francis could very well become the number one contender should Joe Hendry win the title.
Yeah, and then he also has that digital media championship that I believe he lost to PCO too. So he could very well want that title back. So they can go back and have that because again, he lost that I believe at Slammiversary in Montreal as well.
Yeah.
You kind of can do whatever with AJ Francis. There's a lot of people you can go with the amount of free agents that are coming in. You might have limited options. We'll get to that later. But yeah. AJ Francis, not one of them. He's going to be there for TNA for at least a year, possibly more, if I'm correct on that.
Yeah, I don't know what the terms of the deal is. All Sports Illustrated is reported is that he signed a new multi-year deal.
Okay.
Yeah. But speaking of signing new deals, we have one whose deal may be coming to a permanent end. We're going to switch over to AEW. We've got Jeff Jarrett, who's says he has a special announcement to make tomorrow night, and the big rumor is that we're hinting at his possible retirement. Jeff Jarrett's one of my most favorite wrestlers of all time, and I'm honestly on that side where it is time for him to ride off into the sunset. Um, I think he would do great working backstage, maybe as a producer at AEW, hopefully. I don't know. What do you make of this, Parrish?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll want Jeff Jarrett
Sorry.
is a Hall of Famer. Yes, well aware of what just happened, but we'll just move past that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Jarrett, Hall of Famer, obviously has already been inducted. One of the all-time greats, definitely coming out of that Tennessee area. I know he's a friend of Turnbuckle Talk in the past. He's been on Turnbuckle Talk in the past. There's been, a lot of history there. We know what his history was with WWF, WCW, with TNA when he tried to create Global Force Wrestling, which was almost a thing though too. Bobby coming in saying could do a retirement tour. Yeah. I think from what I've seen, Jeff Jarrett can still go. He definitely can go. And I think right now the Fountain of Youth is hitting a lot of these guys, whether it's Jeff Jarrett, whether it's Rey Mysterio, or even R-Truth, going into their 50s almost, in our 50s and plus, and still performing at a very incredible level. If he wants to call it a career, he very much has earned that right to do so. But if he is making an announcement where he's doing something else, that'll be very interesting. I'm not the one to say what he should do. That's up to him. Again, he's earned that right. If he wants to retire, he should be able to ride in the sunset the way he would want, like a true cowboy. Yes, that's a reference to his WCW theme song. But I mean, at the end of the day, Jeff Jarrett, I think, would be a great ambassador for any company. He would be a great representation of any company. He would be a great mentor for any company, teacher, anything like that. The one thing I would love to see is him to maybe go and help Scott D'Amore out with Maple Leaf Wrestling. Even if he was to take a job backstage at AEW, whether he was to take a job at the Performance Center, imagine him and Shawn Michaels in NXT. Imagine him, very weird when you think about, what they did in the WWF in the 90s. Yeah, WWF back then. But Double J, ain't he great? Jeff Jarrett, if it is going to be the last of for this outlaw, then congratulations on a career. If it's not, I'm very excited to see what Jeff Jarrett does next.
Yeah, honestly, one of my most favorite Jeff Jarrett memories is not even him winning, but it's him losing to Shawn Michaels when he dropped the Intercontinental title to HBK. It's one of my most favorite Jarrett matches, one of my most favorite Shawn Michaels matches that I felt was very underrated as well for Shawn.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, obviously, I'm a big Shawn Michaels fan. I'm actually wearing Shawn Michaels shorts right now, but I always look fondly too with the time in WCW. I think he really got his true break in WCW. He was WCW champion a few times, but also if I'm going to the WWF, just the tag team with Owen Hart, you cannot really forget about that. I still remember to this day how openly emotional he was during the Owen Hart Memorial show. And it brings a tear to your eye just based on how close they were. But then also to see him just this past year get a chance to compete in the Owen Hart Memorial Tournament in AEW, and how emotional it was for him in that. And you can tell how motivated he was to perform at the greatest stage. And I think with all of the trials and tribulations he's endured in his life, you can really sense where his heart is, and that is in the ring, fighting for not only what he believes in, but also the sport that he loves, and that is professional wrestling. So at the end of the day, all I have to say is nothing but respect to Double J, and thank you. If you know whether this is the end or not, just thank you.
Yeah, very definitely a big thank you to Jeff Jarrett, and it's it's interesting to think like like how many wrestlers today were inspired by him. I mean, like there's pieces of his character in Elias or Elijah as he calls himself.
Mm-hmm.
There's pieces of him in Joe Hendry, you know.
Just
Um,
well, and anybody who has brought music into their character in pro wrestling definitely has a Jeff Jarrett inspiration to it.
yeah.
We've seen stuff with Elias in WWE in the past. We've obviously have seen him with Road Dogg, especially when Road Dogg was the roadie, then becoming the guy who's actually the voice to "With My Baby Tonight." And it's one of those things where anything that has music to do, chances are they had something. They did something with Jeff Jarrett, especially if you're over, the 30 age plus mark.
Yeah.
Even our truth. And that's somebody that not a lot of people connect the dots, but their TNA and then WWF careers definitely cross paths, and
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where Jeff Jarrett played such an important role, and he brought, like, when you think guitar shot, like somebody hitting somebody with a guitar, you think Jeff Jarrett. You think of Jeff Jarrett, and I'm not even gonna just a little person in WCW. You think of his guitar shots over the past year, and
The one to Beetlejuice.
yeah, and like that one was funny. The ones to like Mae Young, Fabulous Moolah, like two of those were pretty big. The one to I remember when Deborah got Jeff Jarrett, right?
Mm.
When she turned on him, and you just seen, and then even the ones with China.
The Good Housekeeping match. I know
Yeah,
that everybody craps on that match, but I loved that match.
I mean, yeah, and you can crap on it too. And I know Jeff Jarrett himself, he ended up doing that match, but I know there was a lot of controversy in regards to him going into that match, especially with the way his tenure with WWF at the time ended. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you didn't have that match and you didn't have that story, you can argue that even China's individual fame when it was coming and breaking away from DX might not have gone the same way. That definitely helped her
Mm-hmm.
kind of gain some steam. She became the Intercontinental Champion and made history, and that's going to be in a footnote. I mean, outside of also with his father creating TNA Wrestling, by the way, like connecting the two topics
Yeah.
in there. When he had the NWA TNA, he also is a footnote in history as the guy who the very first woman who became Intercontinental Champion defeated.
Yeah, and you also mentioned our truth. I was going to mention his TNA name, Ron Killings.
Yeah, definitely not R. Kelly that you almost said. No.
But you actually like hit the nail on the head again, because our truth. I mean, yeah, our truth has actually come out and said Jeff Jarrett was one of his inspirations, and then you reminded me of the feud that they had over the NWA title in TNA that I actually really loved. You know.
Yeah, and it was. I don't even know if I would have put that together had I not listened to the R Truth Chris Van Vliet today. But yeah, just like you look of some of the amazing greats that has ever stepped foot in wrestling, and especially when you go from the Attitude Era through, and Jeff Jarrett's name needs to be there. He is one of the stay-at-homes in terms of whether or not you're looking at the top stars, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rocks, The Undertakers, but then you go down in the mid cards in that WWF, and you're getting the Owen Harts, you're getting the Jeff Jarretts, you're getting the Ken Shamrocks, and you're getting that's something that really was vital to the WWF during the Attitude Era. And then when he crossed over and went to WCW, he really took a step, especially when he became a part of the NWO. I remember that silver guitar that he always had. And it was just, a lot of memories that he always brought in. You sometimes forget just how much he was a part of your wrestling when you were a kid, or at least for us and our age.
And I'd like to say thank you to Jeff Jarrett for getting me in trouble in high school, because we did I was a part of a class called Television Arts, where we filmed television programs, commercials, all kinds of different things. We learned how to work. And I decided to do one where I was going to promote a WCW ECW crossover pay-per-view event. We had my one friend coming out and imitating Sandman. And Sandman was cutting and this friend who was imitating Sandman cut a promo. So I came out imitating Jeff Jarrett and did the guitar shot using a gigged guitar, because I managed to find one. My teacher did not like that one bit. I got in so much trouble. So thank you, Jeff Jarrett, for that.
Blame Jeff Jarrett all you want, but you made that decision.
It was my idea.
No.
But I was influenced. I'll blame my influence for Jeff Jarrett's influence on me.
Just remember, ain't he great, and you were the slap nuts.
Yep. Well, but it was fun nonetheless to do that to my friend. So,
and also, yes, he coined the phrase "slap nuts."
Yep.
What a great word.
Yeah. And also, like, the matches like he created, like the King of the Mountain match, easily became one of my favorite matches to watch in TNA.
Yeah, and because of the King of the Mountain, you can definitely look at how much that inspired NXT to create the Iron Survivor match. There's definitely a lot of inspiration from that match that carries on in the Iron Survivor match. And that has a lot to do with a mutual partner in Jeremy Borash. So you're looking at the creative mind of Jeff Jarrett inspiring somebody like Jeremy Borash, bringing it to WWE and doing something, and that continues to live on. And if that's not, taking your knowledge and passing it on, I don't know what is, because that's exactly what you're supposed to do. And that is what you accumulate in terms of your career, you give it back at the end. And you're just looking at what he's doing in AEW, and he's just another reason why you're just wondering, okay, why hasn't that company maybe figured things out when you have the likes of a lot of the talent, but a guy like Jeff Jarrett, who has done so much and given back, like I said, with the creation of NWA TNA with his father, Jerry Jarrett, and then all the work that he did in the Tennessee area prior to him, even Smoky Mountain Wrestling, he did some stuff with. And then you also look at Global Force that he tried to start up as well.
Yeah.
After he was out of TNA. So that he has done a lot of things. He has done a lot of, let's just say, sacrifices with his business. He's had a lot of errors as well, but when you're a part of pro wrestling for as long as he has, not everything's going to be perfect.
I mean, he was the first dude to step up to Vince McMahon and form his own company after WCW came to an end.
Yeah. And when you look at it, look at where TNA is still a thing today. And he had the vision, he had the testicular fortitude to challenge probably at that time the most powerful man in pro wrestling. And even to 2025, as of tomorrow, TNA is still around, and it all started through the minds of Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, and again, Jarrett, if you do ride off into the sunset, thank you so much for all the years you've put into this business. We love you. We can't wait to see what you do next.
Even if that's a return to Turnbuckle Talk.
Yeah. But sticking with AEW, tomorrow night they're going to be in Asheville, North Carolina, and there's been a lot of they've been doing a lot of charity work. specifically Adam Copeland and FTR. They've been doing things like donating water to people who have been having trouble, still trying to recover from Hurricane Helene, because they're still going on. Edge actually mentions in this article that his family just recently got clean tap water. I've just got to say, I'm proud of what Edge and Adam Copeland and FTR are doing in trying to get people helped out there, because the struggle is real down there right now.
Yeah, and like anytime you hear about the humanitarian efforts of pro wrestlers, you have a little bit more of a vindication and pride about being not just a pro wrestler, or like if you were happen to be with somebody who got into the business, but also just a fan in general. It makes you feel good, especially with all the bad things that came from pro wrestling through the 80s and 90s and before, and then all of a sudden with the CTE and the dangerous aspects that you always hear, then they shine the do not try at home. It's really nice to see that there's something else there. And this is something that with the humanitarian efforts of Adam Copeland and FTR as well, and it's weird because I'm hearing about Hurricane Helene, and when I was in North Carolina, like that's when it started. And it's just absolutely insane that it's still affecting people, and that just means that how many people have been going through rough times and are in need of help. And if by chance you are somebody that wants to help out, I would definitely say follow Adam Copeland's socials, and I'm sure that you can find a direct resort to do so. But also congratulations and thank you to guys like Adam Copeland and FTR, because what you're doing is helping so many others in a different way. And people take pro wrestlers for granted at times in terms of what they do from an entertainment standpoint, because they're human beings, and these people are now showing their humanity for their society and for their home.
Right, and that's the one thing I've always enjoyed about pro wrestling. Yeah, we do talk about Adam Copeland, we do talk about him and his gimmick, but we also talk about him as the human being. And we know, especially here in Ontario, because he's done a lot of charity work up here in Ontario. Adam Copeland's he's got a heart of gold, and so do the guys at FTR. And we know that they left the WWE on a bit of a controversial note, and they got a lot of heat for that and a lot of hate for that. But bottom line is they're human. The work that they're doing is absolutely tremendous outside of wrestling.
Yeah, and I don't know if that they left on a bad note or on like they got heat, but I think they went out with maybe management confused. But at the same time, there are people that went out because they were fighting for what was right to them.
Yeah.
And that's what they've always been about, doing the right thing and being people before they are pro wrestlers. And you've kind of had that mantra with FTR over the past few years. And that's why there's always been this really tough exterior kind of put on, but then also, you've seen how they've also struggled with mental health and how open they are about sharing, and how much they're relating to people outside of wrestling with issues that are not pro wrestling related. And now they're doing something like this. Again, that's not pro wrestling related. They just happen to do pro wrestling as a job. And because of the fact that they're doing this gives you more of a positive, vindicated feel as a wrestling fan, knowing that the pro wrestlers you watch on TV are also good human beings, because nothing's more vindicating of a fan when they know they're following people that are true. And it's always nice to see something like this, regardless of what you do. Just the fact that they're pro wrestlers, that's secondary. The fact that they're good people, that's what's amazing. And I really hope that the county of Asheville, North Carolina is it South Carolina?
I got the article right here. Trying to scroll. Where did I see the city?
But anyway, I really hope that the people of Asheville, that they're in better state right now than whatnot. And yeah, it's been amazing.
So I actually saw a video news report of FTR. Actually, what they did was they actually like loaded up a truck just filled with food, filled with water to give to these people who are struggling right now. And that's the one thing I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk about too. Is I think that the fans there's still that old school mentality within the fans where they want to try to keep kayfabe alive. So they'll look at something like FTR and they're like, they're supposed to be bad guys. They're not supposed to be doing this kind of thing. And it's like, it's not the 70s or 80s anymore. Kayfabe is still very much around, but we keep kayfabe, and we know how to keep kayfabe and reality separate.
Well, it's always funny to me. It's like, okay, well, you watch like a movie with Matt Damon and he plays a despicable character, but then you see him do charity work outside and you don't say, oh, you're breaking kayfabe, Mr. Damon. You're supposed to be this, sadistic, SOB because I watched this movie. But yet, pro wrestling gets that critique. Why? Because they're doing it every week, right?
Yeah.
It's very silly. And this is coming from somebody who's still to this day somewhat active in the wrestling business. The idea of kayfabe is silly. I understand it, and there was a time where it made sense. It's silly now. Because if you're not respecting the people that are there doing a job and providing a form of entertainment, then the problem is within you as that fan, because you're not going to go to a play and see somebody who's playing a character and then see them outside and be like, oh, you're not wearing a tutu like you were in the play. What's going on? Why aren't you? You're breaking kayfabe. It's silly, right? These people have families, they have a home, they're normal people, and they just happen to do something that you have a vented interest in. So, yeah, not only are they real people, but they also have real concerns, and they have hearts, and they have issues just like everyone else does. And with, Adam Copeland, one of the issues going on is that the city that he lives in and the people that he sees all the time, family, friends of his daughter, families of his daughters, they're going through rough times. And, as a true citizen of Asheville, North Carolina, I was correct, he's doing something about it. And that's what you want. You want the citizens of your county to protect your county, your city, where you live. It's up to you to retain what you love. And that's what the city's doing. And that is what Adam Copeland and FTR are doing.
Yeah, and all I've got to say is good on them for doing that. I mean, if it were me and I were in those shoes, 100% I'd be helping out my city. Like when we had that massive snowstorm some weeks ago, our city was almost on the brink of calling an emergent state of emergency. I would have gladly have grabbed my shovel and gone out to help people out if I could do it at that time,
Well, yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that, always just seems to get lost because, every week we're waiting for, every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, whatever day that they're on TV, we're waiting for that because pro wrestling is an escape for a lot of people. But just at the end of the day, this is a positive story, a positive thing that they're doing. And, we just sending our best to the city of Asheville. And again, if you want to if you want to help out in any way, just follow the FTR, follow Adam Copeland on social media, and I'm sure that you can find a more direct way than what we know at this current time.
Yeah. I think it's time to move all the way to the other side of the world, though.
Okay.
Because we got a TV deal that's come to an end over on this side of the world. New Japan has ultimately decided not to renew their contract with Access TV. And I was actually when I had Access TV for the little bit there, I was actually enjoying the New Japan product there. So now I'm wondering where will what does New Japan have in store as far as trying to get some programming on here? Do they maybe go to a TSN or an ESPN or even up here Sportsnet? Um, what do you think? Where do you think they go?
I think what makes a lot of sense that if you want to target kind of a broader audience, that you go to a streaming platform that actually has the allowance. Whether you want to put it on something like YouTube, I think could make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
If also Scoot Stronghand, thank you for giving us a like on Facebook. Appreciate that. If you want to be active in the chat, please go right ahead. Just be respectful. That's all we ask. But going to something like that, I've always looked at a place like the Zone as an opportunity. I've known they've had wrestling. I've seen Impact Wrestling when TNA was Impact. That was on at one point. A place like that can, is more of a broader, maybe North American vibe. There's a lot of, football, soccer, whatever you want to call it on there. Bobby, thank you for also just liking the video on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
But if you want that viewership over in the United States, Canada, the Western region of the world, then you find a platform that is viewed very highly. Obviously, Netflix probably could be an open market for that. I don't know how open they would be after their deal with WWE. That could be, a little rocky waters on that one. But again, a YouTube is always a great platform. Everyone watches YouTube nowadays. You can get monetized on YouTube. We're trying to figure out how, but I'm sure they can. They can figure it out. They have the platform to do that. But like a DAZN, Paramount Plus, anything
Even
of a platform that is viewed.
even Amazon could do it. Disney Plus maybe.
The Fight Network.
The Fight Network here in Canada, because they did just lose TNA, it would make sense.
Yeah. So like any place that has eyeballs of constant views, that I think is what they should target when you're thinking of what they could do. Now, that's on the side of what they could do next. Playing devil's advocate, is this a sign of things to come for the company? Is this being done for a bigger reason? And that is something I think that's worth asking, because you just never know if there's dominoes falling, if this is the first one. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we have to think of that possibility before we just assume that it's something else as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're planning to maybe bring, because they have their own streaming service over in Japan, and you can get it over here, but it's a little bit of a headache to do it. So I'm wondering if they're making their streaming service a little bit more open to availability on this side of the planet.
I mean, given how the world works and at what speed it goes, I wouldn't be surprised, because in a drop of a hat, Twitter might be yesterday's news and we could have something else.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's called X. Yeah, right. Like, I mean, just remember how quick things can go. Less than a year ago, WWE still had the WWE network.
Yep. And
I'm not saying just in Canada, and but as of tomorrow, it's gone for everyone.
Yep. But yeah.
What about you? Like, where do you think it could go?
So I'm trying to figure out, like, up here in Canada, where it would fit, and I'm leaning more towards the Fight Network now that you mentioned it, because the Fight Network is a Canadian-owned company. In the States, though, I mean, do they still have their partnership with Tony Khan and AEW? I have to assume that that's still in play, right?
I would assume so. Tony Khan loves Japanese wrestling, so I would think he yeah. I would just say yeah. I would assume that there's still a working relationship going on.
Okay, so if I'm New Japan, then I'd talk to Tony Khan, and maybe even Tony Khan's dad about trying to get a better TV deal somewhere, and maybe they can help negotiate something for New Japan. Um, even if it is you put it on like ESPN and it shows up at like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that, that's still not a bad deal for them.
Yeah, and I think too, and I'm not sure what where people like in what niche of the market, like what area like does love Japanese wrestling, because I know that there are areas that probably have a higher demand for it than others. I couldn't tell you those analytics. What I could tell you is that I'm sure that when it comes to pro wrestling, you always know that there's always going to be a niche crowd for sure, and there's always going to be selective ones. I know that just here where I live, there's a lot of people that do enjoy it, so I know it would be watched. The numbers, at the other hand, I couldn't tell you what they would be up from a total standpoint, and but that's why I lean towards something that's more universal, like a YouTube.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't be, because you can do YouTube on different levels, right? Like you can do premium, you can do all these different forms of YouTube. I mean, you could go to Twitch. You can go to some of these other platforms like X or Instagram or TikTok, all that stuff. Like these are very capable platforms to air your product on as well, that everyone throughout the globe can look at. Well, maybe not everyone. I know some countries have bans on social media.
Yeah,
But
like for I like your idea with New Japan going on YouTube, because you can take the show that they've been doing on Access and throw that up on YouTube as a weekly show for free. But when it comes to like Wrestle Kingdom or even the G1 Climax, their big pay-per-views, maybe that's where you pay so that you can watch those, And
I would even look at the TNA model on YouTube because I'm not too sure the extent of what TNA does, but I know that it might not be live content, but what you can do for a small fee on YouTube, you can watch almost just about whatever you want from the past. And but if you want to get to their more modern stuff, like the right now stuff, you subscribe to their another platform, and then you can get like that. Like for TNA, it's TNA Plus, right? For New Japan, it could be, I don't know what they call it, but let's just call it New Japan Plus for sake of an argument.
Yeah, it's called New Japan World. That's what their streaming service is.
I mean, I was close for not knowing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so who knows? I mean, again, like this is, if they're going in that direction, I would assume that they are, because New Japan, I just can't see foreclosing for any time soon.
Oh no!
But if by chance there is something more to this, then we have to look at this as a potential kind of red flag being put out there.
And that's the other another streaming option I thought about is if they could go to Amazon Prime, right? Amazon Prime, so you can subscribe to that, and then you can choose to subscribe to other channels. You can throw New Japan, if they really wanted to, they can throw New Japan World up there as a channel that'll still grant you access to all of New Japan's previous events, because it operates similarly to how the WWE network operated. You can catch all the live pay-per-views, the weekly programming that they do. But you can also go back and watch some of the classic events. And I think that might also be a good fit for New Japan as well, is to go to Amazon Prime.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, but I'm sure if they were to do anything, what they have to do is just do the analytics and say, hey, if we were to do here, what would be the niche? How many people would do it? How many people are already there that, are wrestling fans, did wrestling work or do we think wrestling will work at all there? And that's something they do have to look at. That's why, like, I initially say it is Zone, because wrestling has been on it and it has had a past being on that platform. So clearly, the Zone is in the we will have wrestling on here. We know how powerful that is in the American or America and here, especially with NFL football, especially with soccer, and even with more like extreme sports. But you wonder, okay, if you had some wrestling in there and some, maybe it's New Japan, okay, what would the numbers look like there? As we know, the Zone is open to wrestling. I'm sure that New Japan would be open to that idea as well.
Yeah, and I'm totally looking forward to seeing where they go. But I think right now, because we're getting close to the end of the show here, I think it's time we talk about our Showstopper segment.
On his feet. Oh my God in heaven!
Today we're talking about the free agency going into 2025. Already we know Jordan Grace, Josh Alexander are heading into that free agency. There's been another list of names that are possibly going. There was a gentleman from New Japan Kevin Knight, in the free agency. What do you make of the landscape of the free agency market for 2025? It's looking pretty damn interesting right now.
Yeah, when I think for a lot of wrestling fans, they wanted pro wrestling to always feel more like a sport league.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to say, okay, look at places like the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, what they have, just like on a lot of the shows, is they have different teams. So like different brands like WWE, Raw, SmackDown, NXT. AEW has, AEW, then they also have Ring of Honor. So there are opportunities to work different ones. So if you look at pro wrestling like the sport league and you look at the brands that they can work in as the teams there, they're going to be contracted to work there. And when it's not there and you have a chance to see this movement, obviously you're not going to see WWE and AEW trade talent. But another way you can see that movement is through the free agency. And the fact that free agency is getting more notoriety, and we're getting a lot more information based on where these contracts are, going towards. You sent me a list from Fightful with a bunch of lists with speculated dates and months and years of when these contracts go to. It kind of makes things interesting because you want to know. Like you said, Josh Alexander, February 15th, he's already stated the date. He is going to test free agency. Now, is he closing the door on TNA? No, but he definitely owes it to himself to see what's possible for him, because he's never been in a position of power in terms of his own career to the likes of where he is. So that's one thing of free agency that's very exciting. Another one is, is it a situation like the grizzled young veterans who clearly wanted out of their contracts? And then as soon as they are, now you can start a bidding war if you're an AEW, TNA, multiple companies. And that's something you can go with. Ray Phoenix, we all know that one. We know Penta is WWE right now. We are anticipating that. And that was a signing by WWE. Ray Phoenix in a year's time. That's going to be fun. It's going to be, late 2025. But Jordan Grace, with that expectation that she's going to join WWE once her TNA contract expires, how interesting would it be if Tony Khan offered her a boatload of money to join AEW and be a catalyst of a new Vamped women's division led by Mercedes Moné? That could be something that, attracts Jordan Grace, especially with you're seeing Toni Storm just kind of have 2020, like the year she's had, that could be a name. Then you have Deonna Purrazzo, you have Willow Nightingale, you're having all these women kind of step up and they're starting to, do more over there. But then you look at WWE, you look at the women's division there. There's huge. And then you go to TNA and you're like, oh my God, you have the knockout titles. So, like, if you're not in that, if you're somebody leaving WWE or you want to look at the options, there's options. Same thing with AEW, TNA. It's exciting. And you get giddy as wrestling fans because you want to see that. Back in the day, you saw Scott Hall appear on Nitro and you're like, oh my God, this is unheard of because we didn't have the internet then. Now we do, and now we can have fun with it.
Yeah, right now we've got Steven Chambers coming in saying Josh Alexander ought to test the indies so fans know who he is. I feel like if he does go to WWE, we'll get an explanation on who he is. We'll see some vignettes and things like that. And of course, the way that they've been doing vignettes, it allows us to know who these characters are.
Just on that note, he was on Chris Van Vliet's podcast, who has over 1 billion views on his shows on a collective standpoint. If you happen to be a guest on his show nowadays, people know who you are.
Yeah.
If you're one of the people that don't know who he is because you don't get a chance to watch TNA, then guess what? February 15th will come. You can get excited for the possibility of knowing that there is somebody coming up in free agency that could be hitting the show that you watch that you will be excited for. And then this is a very good aspect of free agency, because if you are somebody that just watches one show and you see that show has then been able to sign a specific person that you don't know, but then you end up liking, you could end up hating, but guess what? You're invested at some point. That is a great thing for a wrestling fan.
Yeah, we also got Bobby Stats coming in and saying, what about Ricky Starks? I mean, Ricky Starks is I think he's the most intriguing outside of Josh Alexander and Jordan Grace to see where he ends up.
Yeah, and that's just the thing when you hear about kind of his rocky road, to say at the very least, with AEW right now. Again, somebody who was on Chris Van Vliet's podcast really does understand to why he's in the position he is, but it's very likely that he's going to leave AEW as soon as he's contractually obligated to and legally allowed to. So if that's the case, then, somebody's going to get a good young prospect who has, already some TV experience and has microphone experience that could go with some of the best. He's gone toe-to-toe with MJF on a microphone. And if you can go toe-to-toe with MJF on a microphone, you stand a good chance of going up against a lot of people who are doing very well on the microphone in the game. And then from an in-ring standpoint, he is doing a lot of just eye-opening, especially when he was with Game Changer for that one episode, one show there.
Yeah. Steven is also coming in saying, give me Penta versus Escobar. I mean, that's a dream match right there. I kind of want Penta to stay away from like the Latino wrestlers and do his own thing, and then maybe you can go to Escobar.
Yeah, but I mean that. But then again, like this is what makes wrestling great, because different fans, different opinions. Neither one is right, neither one is wrong. They're just different, and that's the thing. Maybe Santos Escobar needs somebody like Penta to get to that next level. Maybe Penta needs somebody like Santos Escobar to get his foot in the door in WWE and work with somebody that, from a linguistics standpoint, he can understand in the ring, and they can go, because we all know Penta does not speak the world's best English. I mean, sometimes neither do I, but you have this opportunity now right ahead of you, and that's something to note. We're talking about Penta going to WWE, a form of how interesting free agency can get you excited for a product that you watch.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine how much stock could be if, like, I see like Jericho's Steven Chambers saying Jericho's contract runs out in December 2025. I mean, imagine if he pops into TNA for the first time ever. Imagine if he comes back to the WWE at one point. It's surreal to think, because at one point you never thought Chris Jericho would ever leave WWE. Now it's so hard pressed to think he'll ever go back to WWE. It's just crazy what 5-6 years can do. But, when you have the opportunity that free agency allows you to, it really makes the mind wander, and it's fun to just kind of let it go once in a while.
Yeah, and Bobby coming in saying Penta versus Andrade. Penta Andrade, I think they may have wrestled in AEW, but still, that would be a fantastic match.
Yeah, and then they did wrestle in AEW.
Yeah. But also in New Japan, Gabe Kidd's contract is expiring as well, and I'm kind of curious to see where he goes as well. There's also a list of guys that I'm looking at, also from Fightful, that are mostly doing the independent scene that they're considering free agents. We haven't even touched on like guys like Matt Cardona, who could be considered a free agent because he's not really tied anywhere either. Even Cameron Grimes, aka Trevor Lee,
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about a living legend in Mickie James as well, or even somewhat of a forgotten talent, as we mentioned earlier, Elias. He hasn't fully signed somewhere. Like just how much fun would it be if Jeff Jarrett maybe brings him into AEW and they do something there? How different would that be? Imagine if Mickie James pops in WWE or in AEW and we get Mercedes Moné versus Mickie James. So like some of that stuff is very intriguing as well. Imagine just too, like we talk about, there's people in the WWE that, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, they have contracts coming up relatively soon. Now, yeah, we can expect or assume that they're going to re-sign. But if they don't and say they go to an AEW, how awesome would it be to see that act in AEW now? And now how much more eyeballs are going to be looking over at AEW because Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods are now there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think of that. And I'm even looking at some wrestlers that were once a part of AEW. I mean, I see Marco Stunt on the list, but I know he announced his retirement. So,
yeah.
But
I mean, in wrestling, if you retire, trust me, I'm a prime example.
It doesn't stick.
It doesn't always stick.
I'm even looking at like even some controversial names like Marty Scurll, for instance. I would love to see Marty back in the ring at some point.
If Tessa Blanchard can get a second chance,
Marty can get one too.
I mean, opinions aside, it's pro wrestling. So, yeah. If let's just say if Hulk Hogan can still be a part of wrestling, anybody can.
Yep. And this is just looking at this list, and it's like, for me, it's like, ooh, some of these guys are still wrestling. Like I saw Hakushi on this list, and he's a free agent over in Japan right now.
Is Aldo Montoya on that list? Somebody got to sign him. He's a prospering young star.
He actually is, but under Just Incredible. But not Aldo.
What? You're telling me they're the same? Get out of here.
This is where next week we see him on WWE TV tag teaming with Aldo Montoya or something.
Imagine Aldo Montoya and Axiom just once tagging.
I think that would be a big nostalgia pop,
Right.
For me at least. And we got again Steven Chambers almost is still actually employed by WWE. He's on loan to New Japan, Noah right now.
Yeah, there is a working relationship with WWE and Pro Wrestling Noah right now. Just like there is with WWE and NXT. So that's Omos is, yes, currently under a contract with WWE doing that. That's why you'll see Shinsuke Nakamura to Pro Wrestling Noah every now and then.
This is an interesting question. Bobby Stats is asking, if Marty Scurll does get a second chance, which company do you see him going to? I'm going to go out and say
that's a great time to have a disconnection on audio. But
I said I was going to say AEW because I'm pretty sure he's still friends with the Young Bucks. So
Yeah, but he's also friends with Cody Rhodes, and then that's
Mm-hmm.
the thing. And obviously, because of the English ties, there's a lot of Englishmen in WWE too that would be still friends with him, just like like a Pete Dunne or Tyler Bates or even William Regal.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, and even TNA could do it, right? I mean, again, they brought back Tessa Blanchard, so. It really depends on who we think, who I can see. I can see anybody doing it. It's pro
Mm-hmm.
wrestling. It takes a lot to surprise me nowadays, but at the same time, even just by saying that, even if I saw Marty Skrull on a show tomorrow, I'd be surprised because sometimes I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, but I'm still going to be surprised witnessing it because seeing is believing. And man, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I didn't even think of like the more recent releases from the WWE, such as Indy Hartwell. Like I'm excited to see where she ends up.
Baron Corbin,
Yeah.
Tom Stock, going by his real name now, and it's we're at a time frame where a lot of activity is happening. We get consumed with some of the big things, whether it's a new TV deal, WWE to Netflix. That's a big thing. We're getting so consumed on some of the right now happenings, we kind of forget about what's to come and the excitement that is free agency, especially as of today in 32 days, the Royal Rumble. It's crazy because you just never know who could pop up there. You said Matt Cardona. We've seen him in AEW. We know he has not signed with AEW. We've heard rumors that he was offered a contract. We don't know if that's real. We don't know if that's fake. What we know is that's what's the word that was being put around. But what we do know is that he has not signed yet. So is he still looking at going back to WWE? Is he going to be All Elite? That's why we watch the shows, hoping to see these kinds of moments. And that's what wrestling is all about, the moments.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up like the Royal Rumble because again, I mean last year, right? Did we even expect? It was heavily expected that Naomi was going to return at the Royal Rumble because Hard to Kill was her last event with Jordynne Grace.
Yeah, and it was definitely rumored closer to the Royal Rumble that Jordynne Grace was going to be a part of it too. But it's still something amazing to see. Like, just this last year in 2024, we saw a lot of people pop up. Whether you want to talk about like Okada or Osprey's in AEW, or you want to talk about Joe Hendry being in NXT, or Jordynne Grace, or like Julia Stephanie Backer, and Zarya joining WWE. Like it's
Camille earlier this year, right?
Yeah,
when nobody knew where she was going.
Yeah,
and
that's just the thing. So like there's definitely a free agency bug that happened in 2024 as well. So it's one of those things that it just makes wrestling bigger. Frankie Kazarian, part of that NXT just kind of talent, I should say. I mean, we saw the Motor City Machine Gun sign with the WWE and skyrocketed. Jacob Fatu is part of one of the biggest storylines in WWE. So we're seeing a lot of immediate impact, and we're seeing a lot of talent signing with a company, and it's not a slow burn like we're used to. Sometimes we're seeing them go to the moon, aka Cameron Grimes, Trevor Lee. He's available as well. So where could he pop up?
Personally, Cameron Grimes, I would like to see in TNA. I don't know why, but I feel like his gimmick would work there. If he's still doing that type of gimmick, because I'm not sure. I know he did stuff with NWA after his release, but I'm not sure if he's doing the same gimmick.
Yeah. All I know is free agency creates a buzz, and if you're not excited about free agency, I got questions. But it's one of those things where it just has the opportunity to make the product you love a little bit more fresh, a little bit more exciting, and to say, hey, and you nudge a buddy of yours, you call a buddy, you text a buddy, you poke one on Facebook, you message him, whatever the case may be, but you're like, hey, did you hear? And they're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden now you have something to absolutely just have a blast over. And yeah, and then that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Now I'm looking. I'm on the women's side of this list too, and I'm wondering, like, let's say Matt Cardona signs with, let's say he signs with WWE. Steph DeLander has been known to kind of like follow him everywhere we go. Do we get like a 2-for-1 deal with Steph DeLander if that were to happen?
Potentially. I don't know what Steph DeLander's status is right now. I know that she was taking time off with a neck injury. I know that she also had breast reduction surgery as well. So there's going to be a lot of time for her to, and then if anybody wants to say why, she did that to help the neck and the recovery of the neck. It definitely took a lot of pressure away from the neck. So that is why it was done. So I hope people aren't judging her on that. She's doing what's best for her health, and that's what's more important.
Yeah.
So if she was to follow Matt Cardona into WWE, if Matt Cardona was to sign there, that'd be very intriguing, especially for the dynamic of Chelsea Green being there. What does that do? Is she going to be with Chelsea? Is she going to go oppose Chelsea? How is that going to go? That would be very intriguing as well.
Yeah, because the last time I saw Steph DeLander was in TNA, and they had that whole thing with Matt Cardona where she turned on him, right? So it'll be intriguing to see if they maybe somehow continue that into the WWE. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But on that note, we're approaching the end of the show here, and I want to showcase everything that we've got going on as far as the Turnbuckle affiliation program goes. Take a look here, guys.
Turnbuckle Studios and the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program bring you the week of streams. All times are in Eastern Time. Monday nights you get the Locker Room Breakdown at 7 p.m., followed by the Raw Patrol at 8 p.m. Tuesday brings you the flagship show, Turnbuckle Talk, at 8:05 p.m. Wednesday we play games with the PlayStation Showcase at 8 p.m. Thursday we get a variety stream with the Boar's Nest at 8 p.m. Friday we game again with Unleashed, the Jessica Wilde story at 7 p.m. Following the game, join us for the SmackDown Security Detail at 8 p.m. The weekend brings you Saturday Night Gaming at 8 p.m. On Sunday be sure to catch the Chris Parrish podcast at 12:15 p.m. Be part of the shows and join the chat every day.
Yeah, so before we end the show, I see a few comments here I'd like to get to. Yeah. We've got going to be a lot of returns for the Women's Royal Rumble. Asuka, Charlotte, Mickey, Alexa Bliss, Carmella, etc. This is coming from Steven. I kind of want to squash the Asuka one because I believe she's not due back until the summer because of how serious her injury is.
Yeah, and I'm going to flat out just squash the idea of all the returns being at the Royal Rumble. You never see that many returns at a Royal Rumble.
Yeah,
it's also taking account with WWE on Netflix now and how big these Raws are going to be moving forward. We're going to see some of these returns happen on Raw and not at the Royal Rumble. Charlotte very well could be back as soon as January 6th. So this coming Monday on whether it's Mickey James, Alexa Bliss, Carmella is still ways away. She did have an issue with her surgery that she had with her foot, especially giving birth to a child. So she is going to be later into the year as well. Alexa Bliss, Charlotte, I would be more focused on those two for returns. Mickey James, I think I'm hoping, but who knows?
Yeah, I think Mickey could be just like how they have the one-off legend that shows up in the Rumble. Mickey could very well be that woman,
Yeah, again, We don't even know. I mean, Trish Stratus is another name that could show up there as well. But at this point, like we can go so far into just thinking, what could happen, because and like as you said, Trish and Lita, like again, like we can go through every single name in the book there and say, hey, this very well could happen, but we'll never know. And also take into account WWE has a pretty deep women's division as it is. They really don't need to do so many returns for that match.
Yeah. So on that note, I think it's time we say farewell to another week, to the final episode of Turnbuckle Talk of 2024. Chris, Mr. Parrish, where can the people find you?
They can follow me at my house, celebrating New Year's, which first off, Happy New Year's to everyone. Thank you for joining us for the last Turnbuckle Studios stream of 2024. Hopefully you have a happy beginning to 2025. But if you want to find me, you can find me on my Linktree at linktr.ee/Chris Parrish, where you can see all my socials, primarily 5. My Facebook, my YouTube, my Twitch, my X account, my Instagram. Why those 5? Because those are where you can see the Chris Parrish podcast every Sunday at 12:15 p.m. Eastern time, where this week, the man that you see with me, Chris Best, and the host that I'm kind of replacing, Carl Carafel, will be joining me, as they'll be helping me with the Chris Parrish podcast draft. We're bringing that back, but instead of them being the GMs of a brand, they're going to be executive networks representation. So one's going to be for Netflix, one's going to be for CW, the other one's going to be for USA, representing the brands. So you want to check that out. Also check out Beercade YEG, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on X, or whether it's on Instagram. They are a proud paying sponsor of the Chris Parrish podcast, located at 105 82nd Ave. And that is where you can see all of my stuff, especially Friday for the SmackDown Security Details, which, by the way, WWE live on YouTube.
Yeah, and before we get to my socials, I'm going to give out the social to our boss, the one and only Carl Carafel. You can find him at his Linktree, linktr.ee/Carl Carafel. That's KarlKarufel. And you can find me at my Linktree, linktr.ee/Chris_best83. The next time you can find my face will be tomorrow in a taped version of the PlayStation Showcase, as we're going to take a look at Ghost of Tsushima. And on that note, guys, as the one Carl Carafel would say, I'm lagging here just a little bit. There we go. Okay. The world is a scary place. Take care of each other.